Firstly, the elephant in the room, well, besides the actual topic of this video, the lights are fucked. I have a lamp. It's been a while since I've done a political rant. And, oh boy, this is going to be a doozy, and I'm probably going to piss off a lot of people on my ideological side, but there's also a part of me that just doesn't give a flying fuck. TLDR. Fuck Putin. Putin's a goddamn fascist piece of shit. What he's doing is Hitler-like. It's almost exactly what Hitler would have done at the start of World War II, if not exactly what Hitler did at the start of World War II. Rationalizing arguments of, well, this bit of land used to be part of my country, so I'm going to invade it. That's what he's done. And the international community has responded with, fuck you. Now, is it a fuck you in a way that will help the Ukrainian people meaningfully? Probably not. I don't think it will. Because Ukraine's not a part of NATO. And I think if Ukraine was a part of NATO, Putin wouldn't have tried this shit. But Putin is obviously not a sane man. He is a fascist. He is an authoritarian. He is isolated. He is clearly losing his fucking mind. It's the prime example of the authoritarian strongman's true weakness. A man so afraid of losing his power that he will do something desperate. If you just look at snippets, video snippets of the shit going on, you see Russian soldiers almost going, some Russian soldiers going, well, what the fuck are we doing here? You see Ukrainian citizens righteously and rightfully pissed the fuck off. I'm doing my best not to get too emotional. And that will be hard. As you can see. It's always horrifying when you have a war crime happening, or several war crimes happening, whether it's America, whether it's Israel, whether it's Russia, whether it's North Korea, whether it's a bunch of other fucking countries. If you look at the acts and the aftermath of a war crime, it's horrifying because it shows the true darkness of being human. Humanity is a weird fucking spectrum if you really think about it. You're capable of great light, or you're capable of great darkness, you're capable of somewhere in between. In retrospect, I am furious at the quote-unquote online left, who seem to be Putin apologists when it comes to this Ukrainian bullshit and rationalizing every fucking action Russia's taken in Ukraine, even going back to Crimea in 2014. So it's like, okay, let me get this straight. So Russia's also an imperialist superpower. Make no mistake in that. The US is imperialist and Russia is imperialist. Let's not mince words here. They're both imperialist fucking superpowers. But as of right now, Russia is the greater fucking evil. And if you got a problem with that, you're a dumb motherfucker, and I got no problem saying that. Russia is led by a literal fucking fascist. This is a man who is homophobic, anti-woman, anti-Semitic. I will link to a prime example of Putin's anti-Semitism slipping in an interview with the Washington Post, or it was an article from the Washington Post, but it was from a different interview where he mentions groups of people who would attack America's election. This was in regard to 2016. And one of the groups he mentions was Jews. Jews. The fucking fact that all of a sudden, when it's not America, imperialism's fine. Appeasing an imperialist power is fine. Justifying the actions of an imperialist power is fine. Now people always go, Well, Putin's doing this as a reaction to NATO expansion. To NATO, guarding Poland, being on the border of Ukraine, because they know who the fuck they're dealing with here. If Putin would do something that brazen, as he clearly fucking did. Whatever actions NATO took, not in hindsight, but as of right now, were perfectly fucking justified. The Ukrainian people wanted the weapons that NATO gave to them. Why? Because they know who the fuck they're dealing with. You're dealing with Vladimir fucking Putin. You look at his history, this is not a man you want to go to... You know the old line, you never bring a knife to a gunfight? That's pretty much what this fucking is. You have a gun, and you bring it into a fucking gunfight. That's what bringing those weapons were. If anything. And another thing I'm really fucking pissed with, the more I think about the online left, some of the online left I should say, and their rationalization towards justifying Putin's fascist actions, and they've probably been doing this for a long time, is under the guise of wanting to preserve peace and wanting to prevent World War III. I will say what I'm about to say is ironic given the person who I'm taking this from and in the context of how I'm presenting. Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., paraphrasing, said there is a difference between a peace based on justice and a peace based on appeasement, or a peace meant to preserve some sort of hierarchical bullshit that was racist. In this case, Putin's actions are pure imperialist. Trying to rationalize someone just going into another country who merely wants its borders respected, who merely wants its sovereignty respected, a country who can't enter NATO because NATO has denied Ukraine's request to become part of NATO. NATO has said, we're not going to let Ukraine into the EU. Now, given what Putin's done, I'm wondering if that stance is going to change, and I frankly hope it does. Now, you might call me a hypocrite, maybe, because at some point, I think I might have made some videos where I gave Trump credit for talking to Vladimir Putin. I think I was wrong. I think I was a dumbass early 20-something who didn't fully understand the gravitas and evil of someone like Putin. That you weren't dealing with a rational man, and that Trump's praise and appeasement to him was probably because the shit Putin could get away with is what Trump would love to have gotten away with during his presidency. Everything you can give the U.S. shit for, in terms of violating civil liberties, having authoritarianism, having a brutal police force that targets dissenting groups, being imperialist, its media being complicit in justifying said imperialism. Russia has that. Russia literally has state propaganda. Between the two, you cannot get rid of Putin. The elections in Russia are truly a scam compared to the elections in the United States. I'm talking about presidential. I don't have the greatest understanding of Russian politics to understand, say, how their parliament works. If they have governors, how their territories are divvied up, if they even have governors similar to the United States has governors with governing respected states. But I do know when you really just look at how long Putin's been in power, it's insane. Putin was prime minister, he's been president. The person that succeeded him as president was merely a fucking puppet, who Putin then ousted during his run for president back in 2012. It's crazy to me how, on the one hand, American leftists, I'm talking about the online left who are rationalizing Putin's bullshit will look at shit like Afghanistan. Look at all the imperialist wars that America's been in, and rightfully say, that's unjust, that's horrible, look at the war crimes we've committed, look at the horrors of what we've done. And then look at Russia for doing literally the same fucking thing, mind you, if not worse, or on par with the worst shit the United States has done. And go, oh, that's okay. That's perfectly justifiable. Do you not realize the levels of fucking stupid that thought process is? The levels of, I can't come up with the right word to emphasize how stupid that is. You will criticize your own country's politics, but when another country does the same thing, you're suddenly okay with it. You'll even kowtow and support and rationalize the far-right fascist perspective. You'll basically be a borderline agent for said fascist, going against your own political ideology. What do I need to do to get you to understand that Vladimir Putin is everything you are ideologically opposed to, everything you claim to support, to believe in, he is against. Putin is your enemy, as is the United States is in regards to imperialism. And yet, you don't see that. You'll come up with these pseudo-intellectual reasons to justify what Putin's doing. If I may. Of course I may. It's my own goddamn video. The argument of, well, Putin is trying to denazify Ukraine. You know what Google is, right? You know how long it takes to Google, what religion is the president of Ukraine? You know what you'll get? He's Jewish. The Prime Minister of Ukraine is fucking Jewish. Ukraine is very tolerant towards Jews in Europe compared to a lot of other fucking countries. So yes, Ukraine may have a small neo-Nazi problem. But to be frank, how the fuck is that any different than the United States or any other fucking European country that has its own white supremacist fucking problem? So Putin trying to pull that shit is ridiculous. And you using that as a justification for Russia's actions are equally ridiculous. Because, at the end of the day, white supremacy is a international cancer within Western society. It is something that will be stomped out by people with the balls to do it. Looking at an authoritarian strongman who's using a literal playbook of the Nazis to land grab and justify the reconstructions of an empire doesn't really look like the best look, does it? Doesn't really seem like the best argument to look at and then try to rationalize. The more I look at the quote-unquote history and context that a lot of these big-time streamers or YouTube leftists, people who I usually respect, mind you, such as Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk and Hussein Abi, Hassan Piker, using talking points from Russian state propaganda. The best phrase for it is, that ain't it, chief. If you want to know another perspective I want to add to this, it is as a Jewish man who has Ukrainian blood. One of the first things I Googled, and I will get very emotional about this, I will do my best to suppress my emotions in this section. I Googled, how is this affecting Ukrainian Jews? How could I help Ukrainian Jews right now? who are going to be refugees once again, who are getting kicked out of their homeland by a bunch of goddamn fundamentalist fascist pieces of shit. It's the continuing cycle. Blah, blah, blah. This is the continuing cycle of Jews being oppressed in almost every country in the fucking world. I'm finding it very difficult to put into words the levels of horror, the levels of ancestral post-traumatic stress disease. I know where the fuck I came from. I know the horrors that my ancestors went through. I've seen anti-Semitism on the rise in my country and in Western society. And I cannot tell you levels of pride I have of a Jewish president standing up to a goddamn tyrant and saying, fuck you. You think I'm gonna leave my people to die? The people who are under my leadership? You think I'm gonna be a spineless coward? No. You can't break our spirit. It's kind of fucked up. I'm gonna use this quote. Alright. The living embodiment of you take our lives, but you'll never take our freedom. And you know the reason using that quote is kind of fucked up given this context. But I cannot think of a more perfect quote to use as a representation of the fighting spirit of the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian president. Now, before any of you think that this is just an anti-Russian video, or I'm being bigoted towards Russians, I want to clarify something. My rage is not towards the Russian people, or even the Russian military to some extent. It is mainly at the son of a bitch who is president of that country. Because there are people in Russia who are having the balls to protest Putin's tyranny, begging him no war, protesting no war, getting fucking arrested and brutalized by the Russian police for being anti-war, for standing up to their president when it is not in their favor to do so. Protesting in Russia is fucking dangerous. Look at what happened to Pussy Riot, and anyone who has been speaking against Vladimir Putin. They will be met with no mercy for doing that. And yet, these Russian patriots see what the fuck is happening, know the risk, and still march in the fucking street. Still protest their government. Demand that their leadership do the ethical thing and stop this evil invasion purely because it is the morally righteous thing to do. And you cannot get more ballsy than that, in my opinion. And that is something to truly admire. So, if you got through this video and are unclear with where my stance is, Vladimir Putin, who I know is not watching this video, because why the fuck would he watch some random Jewish guy in the United States call him a tyrannical piece of shit? But he's a tyrannical piece of shit. So Putin, fuck you. There are people who will stand up to evil like you. There are people who have more courage than myself, or a lot of other people I know, who will look at your invasion and fight. I will leave a link to a charity you can donate to help Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. And I will also leave a link to a Jewish Ukrainian, to a Jewish specific Ukrainian charity you can donate to and support if you are of Ukrainian Jewish descent, like myself. With that in mind, I stand with Ukraine and fuck Vladimir Putin.